Ruslan is the only son of very wealthy parents who are not without reason called millionaires. Yes, it's true, millionaires not in the first generation. Their wealth is the result of labor, and hard labor at that, without weekends or holidays. They owe their current position solely to work, so they do everything to ensure Ruslan doesn't experience what they went through. They've already prepared a solid foundation for their son. He even has a decent starting capital in his personal account, and then Ruslan should multiply it himself. It would be good if his workplace, or rather the business of his entire life, became his father's company. All that's left is to wait until the son grows up. For now, Ruslan is still a schoolboy. In such a family, a child often grows up spoiled, but Ruslan wasn't a complete major, spoiled rich kid in every sense. Yes, he was arrogant, cynical, and loved the beautiful life. He didn't know any other. At the same time, he was getting an education in Europe, precisely getting it, bought with daddy's money. Among a crowd of similarly spoiled peers from wealthy parents, he stood out because he was already an excellent specialist, read a lot, and possessed knowledge not only in his professional field, but in a broad sense. There was another distinction. Ruslan's parents didn't have a trail of gossip about any affairs on the side, which evoked not only envy but also respect. And Ruslan knew that both his dad and mom helped some shelters and orphanages. Several times he asked to be taken along the next time they went. Dad stayed silent and Mom was against it. She herself took a long time to recover after each visit to the shelter and didn't want Ruslan to feel the same. But the fact that his parents constantly helped someone stuck with Ruslan and would later play its role. After returning from Europe and about a year and a half of working in his father's company, it became clear to Ruslan that soon another question would be on the agenda. In the family, they were already talking about how it was time for Ruslan to get married. But for now, they were just talking. They weren't pressuring him or setting conditions that the future marriage should match the family's status. Ruslan's parents themselves had married not for mercenary reasons, but solely out of love, and to this day they treated each other with care and understanding. Ruslan, meanwhile, considered himself free. It didn't stop him from changing girlfriends without staying with any for long, and certainly not proposing marriage. He had decided for himself to wait until he turned 30. After 30, he would choose his future wife. Life made its own adjustments. Ruslan hadn't met girls on the street for a long time. There were plenty of other places. Ruslan was almost always in a car, and even if he saw an attractive girl, he'd have to either honk to make her stop or park somewhere and then catch up. Pure hassle. But that time he stopped at an appliance store, and as he was entering, he bumped into a girl who was leaving. He didn't yield to her. He was used to people yielding to him. But this girl didn't yield. They stood facing each other, waiting to see who would step back first. The girl didn't want to wait long. With a half bow, she said to him, "After you, sir," which amused him. "I beg you, ladies first." And that's how their acquaintance began. Ruslan forgot where he was going. The girl was shoulder height to him, graceful, not flashy, but dressed with taste, and most importantly, she had eyes in which one could read slight contempt, and Ruslan couldn't tolerate contempt. He couldn't remember anyone looking at him so boldly. He deployed all his charm, and with this stranger, the contempt toward him disappeared completely. Word for word, they got acquainted. The girl's name was Dina. That was basically all Ruslan managed to learn then, but he wouldn't be Ruslan if he didn't get to know Dina better. She clearly stood out from the crowd of his temporary girlfriends, with whom you could have fun and nothing more. Ruslan had to try hard to win this girl over. Dina was well aware that she liked Ruslan, but he was one of those who would always strive to be in charge. That could become a problem at work and in the family. If the wife didn't agree to submit to him in everything, it would be a catastrophe, and most likely such a marriage would fall apart. And it would be good if there were no children. With children, it's much harder. Dina knew how hard her friend had taken her parents' breakup. Although the friend was on her mom's side, her dad's departure hurt her a lot. Dina also knew the situation in the apartment upstairs. After the divorce, the mom was left with 2 children, and soon the younger daughter stopped going to music school, even though she was the best student. Now the mom had no money to pay for it, and the father wasn't paying alimony. But there were other examples too. Dina had a completely different family. She had long decided that she wanted to live differently, and if not, then not at all. Earlier, Dina thought everyone lived like that, when Dad took care of his, as he said, girls, Mom and her, and when joy came not from buying a new furniture set or a mink coat, but because everyone went camping by the sea or to the mountains, when birthdays were celebrated not in a restaurant but at home, yet the table was set so that no chef could outdo it. Dina knew she had seen many times how her parents could calmly skip going to the cinema for the latest blockbuster that required special glasses, saying they'd already decided to watch an old black and white film that evening. It was precisely for this free-spirited attitude that her mom and dad instilled in her that Dina would be grateful to them all her life. Ruslan quickly realized that Dina had not only plenty of beauty and charm, but also a strong sense of self-worth. He realized that he would never be embarrassed by her anywhere. She was well-mannered, educated, and tactful. Ruslan also noticed that Dina calmly accepted gifts, but would refuse if the price of his gift exceeded a certain amount. But she herself never even hinted at wanting some jewelry or the latest phone model. In this too, Dina differed from Ruslan's previous girlfriends. Early in their relationship, she straightforwardly said that he would greatly upset her if he tried to surprise Dina with an expensive gift. Accepting expensive perfume from Ruslan, she said it was the first and last time. Giving such gifts was improper, and receiving them too. Dina said it in such a way that Ruslan understood it wasn't a pose. This was her real stance. Very soon, Ruslan admitted to himself that Dina had taken him captive. Yes, he was ready to marry her right now if Dina agreed, because in this too, he admitted to himself, he didn't have 100% confidence. If only Dina were independent with her sense of dignity, but for it not to apply to him, because how could it be that Ruslan didn't have the last word, that his decision wasn't final, that his plans weren't at the forefront? Then Ruslan thought and said openly how he envisioned his wife. He started by saying the ideal option was her, Dina, inaccessible to everyone else, but at the same time, Dina should be led. There are leaders and followers, and this isn't up for discussion. He, Ruslan, is the leader, and Dina can remain strong and independent for everyone else. It's important that she recognizes Ruslan as stronger and lets him command. Wait a second, she interrupted his speech calmly. So if I become your wife, I'll have to idolize you, sing your praises, and be submissive? Did I understand you correctly, my lord? Dina made it clear that this wouldn't happen, and otherwise it would go against Ruslan, so they should part ways. They parted. Dina felt such emptiness, but she understood she couldn't live the way Ruslan wanted. Besides, Dina wasn't demanding anything supernatural. That's how her parents lived. No one pressures or subjugates anyone. They were lucky to meet each other. Ruslan felt lost too. He wanted to see Dina and replay everything, then convinced himself that these were his principles, his position, and changing it would mean losing himself. So he distracted himself in the proven way, in the company of girls where he was the commander. So much is often mixed in a person. In Ruslan, for example, his arrogance, impunity, lordly manners coexisted with pity for sick children. Back in London, when he was studying, he once ended up in a hospital where children with cancer were lying. He ended up there because every 6 months, students participated in a charity event. Gifts were gifts, but students also had to clean corridors and the grounds. There, Ruslan encountered children. It was hard to remain indifferent looking at those undergoing chemotherapy. So, upon returning home, Ruslan, without telling anyone, made his way to the children's oncology clinic and started regularly transferring money there. Several times, he ordered new medical equipment from abroad and came to the hospital himself multiple times over 7 years. No one knew about it, especially his acquaintances. The chief doctor wanted to publicly thank Ruslan several times for such great and necessary help for the children, but Ruslan asked and even demanded that his name not appear anywhere. Was it modesty or unwillingness to explain the impulse to participate in the oncology clinic's work? Ruslan couldn't explain it to himself. He wanted to tell Dina, but then changed his mind. She probably didn't imagine him in such a role. Now, in secret from everyone, Ruslan marked the anniversary of his breakup with Dina. On that evening, he didn't meet anyone, and if someone came to his home, Ruslan simply wouldn't open the door because he knew he wouldn't be understood. Tomorrow, according to plan, he had a trip to the children's oncology clinic. He needed to find out what the clinic needed first, and then Ruslan would search and find what the chief doctor pointed out. In the morning, Ruslan was already in the office of Alexander Efremovich, the chief doctor. He told how they managed to halt the disease in one 4-year-old patient. "Such a nice little boy," says Alexander Efremovich, "and so patient, I'd even say a hero. All like his mom. A young woman, but such torment, such pain in her eyes. We've seen so much parental grief here. She and her little son touched us especially. Do you want me to introduce you to the boy? You'll see what a miracle he is." After finding out what the clinic needed first, Ruslan walks with the chief doctor down the familiar corridor. They enter one ward, and on the bed by the window, half sitting, leaning on a pillow, is Ruslan? A little one, about 4 years old. No, Ruslan understands it's not him, it's a child, but an exact copy of Ruslan. He remembers himself like that. There are even a few photos. His dad took them when they left the barber shop. Ruslan had attached colorful plasticine balls to his long hair, and Mom couldn't pull them out, it hurt. They cut it short. But this little copy of Ruslan has lost his hair for another reason, and Ruslan knows why. He's seen many such children, both in England and here at home. Ruslan turns to Alexander Efremovich. He wants to ask the boy's name and his diagnosis, but doesn't ask because the door opens and Dina enters. She greets without looking closely at who's in the ward. Dina hurries to the boy. He smiles and says something. So this copy of him is Ruslan's son? His son is with Dina? And from Ruslan bursts out, "Why? Why didn't you tell me?" Only now does Dina look closely at Ruslan, recognizes him, and says, "Wait for me in the hall." Ruslan can't concentrate. Before his eyes is the boy, and it's definitely his son. In such a place, with that ethereal smell of forest herbs? But Ruslan remembers that Dina, like him, decided everything herself, and so she decided Ruslan shouldn't know about the son. And the son is in trouble. He needs to be saved, and Ruslan will do everything for the disease to retreat. He'll take him to the best clinics, find the best doctors, if only time hasn't been lost. Dina comes out, and Ruslan barely restrains himself from shouting in her face, but he'll try to express himself without yelling. "How could you? How dare you hide my son from me? Was it only his illness that prompted you to tell me? I can help, and I will help, and I won't listen to you." "No, Ruslan, you will listen to me," Dina says, in an authoritative tone that brooks no objection. First of all, she denies that Artemka is his son. Ruslan doesn't believe her. The boy is an exact copy. "This is not your son. First, I'll say that we don't need money. Charitable foundations and volunteers helped me and my parents. For the surgery and rehabilitation, we had enough. Now everything depends only on Artemka himself. I know that now much depends on the doctors too. They will, I'm sure, do everything possible. That's first. Second, when we broke up back then, I was at my lowest. I saw you in every young man. More than once I wanted you to come to me. I didn't leave, but you weren't there. In short, it was very bad. And then your father helped me a lot. I don't know if someone told him where to find me, or as he assures, he found him himself. Your father supported me a lot back then, and did it in a way that I didn't feel pitied. We communicated. He's an interesting person. I learned a lot from him. And here, I really don't know, but one time that communication crossed the line. You can believe it or not, I don't know. With your father, we crossed it just once. It was enough for me to not find peace with myself for what I did. I knew your parents treated each other very well. I'd seen your mom more than once. I'm sure he blamed himself too for what happened between us. We talked later and never saw each other again. And when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't tell him anything. I think he has no idea about Artem, and you shouldn't tell him. So don't blame yourself. Artem is not your son. Well, you can insult me now as you wish. You have the right. I did it myself. You won't succeed in blaming anyone else. Even you wouldn't destroy your parents' marriage for anything. These years I've found myself. It's true. I have no right to make mistakes. I have to fix them, and I did. Having said that, Dina turned and went back to the ward to Artem. Ruslan stood there as he was, and remained standing. Then he felt sorry for himself. How could so much pile up on him in just half an hour? What to do now? There in the ward is a little boy so much like him, but it turns out not his son, but his younger brother. There in the ward is Dina, whom Ruslan hasn't forgotten, and probably never will. At home is Mom. She knows nothing, and won't learn from Ruslan. Dad probably blames himself too. Ruslan should blame himself more. He understood long ago that he needs Dina, but both he and she are carrying on with their pride. Neither wants to yield. In the ward is a little kid who doesn't even understand what's happening to him. Ruslan comes to Artem every day. The boy waits for him. Ruslan and Dina understood, acknowledged that they want to be together. It was hard. They had to change themselves first, especially Ruslan. Over these 5 years, as he called them, lost years, he matured, built new values and priorities for himself. At the very top now stood family, and it turned out to be a family of 5 right away. His, Ruslan's parents, Dina's parents, Artem. The secret of who Artem's father is would remain a secret. No one would ever know whose son he is. His father is Ruslan, and Artem was the first to acknowledge that. Artemka recovered. During his recovery, Ruslan and Dina not only thought about the irreversible, they already quietly celebrated and got married. At a small party, their parents met, and it turned out they quickly found common ground. Their life principles coincided in many ways. Now, Dina and Ruslan don't stand shoulder to shoulder, don't strive at all costs to defend only their own opinion. They know what that can lead to. And they also know that a draw in the family is much more important than someone's victory. It wasn't hard for Ruslan and Dina not to think about what had happened once. At first, they caught themselves when communicating with Ruslan's father, but he really didn't know what relation he had to Artem. Mom could keep their secret too. He helped Artemka. He became the favorite grandson who had 2 grandmothers and 2 grandfathers, and Artem knew that too. The best mom and dad. If someone had told Dina and Ruslan back then that everything that happened had happened to them, they hardly have believed it. It fell too far outside accepted norms. Probably their love, which they had renounced 5 years ago, had its say, but they would never again step on the rake that could ruin their lives. And one day at breakfast, Artem looked at them and asked, "Am I going to be an only child? Don't I have a little sister or brother? If you don't have money to buy them, then don't buy me toys. I'll manage. I want to have a brother or sister like Ilyusha and Roma." Artem, without realizing it, said what Dina and Ruslan had been thinking about themselves, and both wanted it. Artem would have a little sister. In a year and a half, Dina would give birth to a daughter. They would name her what Artem suggested, but after consulting with the grandmothers and grandfathers first. The parents immediately accepted Artem's option, but Artem called his little sister Sasha. When asked why Sasha, Artem replied, "Because that's what Ilya's sister is called. When we grow up, I'll marry her. Sasha's really good." The grandmothers and grandfathers said in advance, "Tell us when you're planning to get married. We need to prepare a gift." "Of course I'll tell you, but I haven't thought of what gift I want yet. I need to consult with Sasha, too." The adults barely held back their laughter, and each thought to themselves what a wonderful Artem they had. When they brought the daughter home from the maternity hospital, Artem would announce that this is his sister Alexandra, aka Shura, our Sanya and Olya. They rejoiced that their 6-year-old son had his first crush. What happens?